Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. So today is the start of a little tiny, very small mini series that I thought I should do because a couple weeks ago I did a podcast on attachment styles. It was kind of like a general overview. And then I was like, maybe I should do an episode on each kind of attachment. Insecure attachment. Sorry. Secure, not getting an episode, at least for now, but maybe in the future. I think that could be really valuable. But, I thought, let me through the lens of a personal experience, a kind of example or question, let me explore each attachment style and talk more in depth about them. Anxious, avoidant, and for disorganized, more on that later, where you can find that information. But so if whether you identify with this attachment style or someone in your life does, hopefully there will be a lot of information to help you understand more deeply what people are talking about when they're like, oh, I'm anxiously attached, I'm, whatever, that you can kind of know how this shows up and what's going on, and that, whatever attachment style you have, nothing wrong with you. It's just, learned behaviors that we develop to try to get the love and the care that we desperately need, especially as children when we're not capable of fully taking care of ourselves. So, I'm excited about it. I hope you're excited about it. I think it's a really important topic. It seems to resonate with a lot of people. So, I want to give the people what they want. Here I am. That's what I'm here for. And hopefully illuminate things in a really digestible way. So if you have your own attachment related questions or otherwise, please reach out to me at theevergreenrx@gmail.com or give me a text. Call me up at 512-655-9888. I would love to hear from you, hear your question, and explore whatever it is you're dealing with or the exact manifestation, because as much as attachment styles are, they've been developed and fleshed out so much, it can be really helpful and explanatory. Still, there's a lot of personal variation, and I found that a lot in my work as a therapist too, where it's not always abundantly clear to me what style someone has. And that might be because I'm overthinking it, but also something I've talked about a little bit more before that they're finding is that there is more of a spectrum, patterns to attachment, and not so much these fixed, rigid styles. And so you might have a particular kind of set of patterns or manifestation of this that you're like, hey, I don't really know what to do here. This doesn't exactly fall into any camp that you've talked about before. This isn't so clear cut. And so I'm happy to try to explore that with you. So just let me know. Okay, I think it's time to just go ahead and jump into the Evergreen RX shop, pharmacy, apothecary, and answer this question on anxious attachment. Okay, dear Evergreen, I think I fall more on the anxious side of attachment, and it's starting to show up in my relationship in ways I'm not proud of. For example, if my partner seems even slightly off, I immediately assume it's about me. Been there. Last week, he said he was tired after work and didn't want to talk much, and I spiraled. I reread our text and convinced myself he was pulling away. He keeps telling me everything is fine, but I never fully believe him. I always feel like I'm one misstep away from being left. How do you know when you're reacting to a real issue versus when you're reacting to your anxiety? And how do you stop needing constant reassurance without feeling like you're abandoning your own needs? Very good question. If I do say so myself. And they're big. So I'm like, whew. I'm going to pull all the dusty files out of my brain from my childhood development class in college. Because I really think that's the one place that I formally learned about attachment, which is kind of wild considering I went to grad school for counseling, but we didn't really have any super dedicated class, at least that I remember, on this topic, which it's a pretty big one. I mean, I guess it depends on how you view therapy and what you think is important, but at least in my world, and for a lot of people I know, it's a very big topic. And I guess I did have a child development class in grad school as well, but I remember it really sticking out to me from undergrad. And so I'm pulling out that information, and, childhood studies were really the birthplace of attachment science. Shout out to Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby. If you know anything about attachment, you probably recognize those names. But there was, lab studies basically on infants and young children and their interaction with their caregivers that helped illuminate these different styles. I also have to give a big shout out to Karen Pando-Mars and Diana Fosha, who have done a lot of work on expanding our understanding of attachment and how it shows up in relationship. Those two and their related colleagues and research that they've done are huge in informing kind of what I'm sharing with you today. So I want to give credit where credit is due, because I definitely, this is not something that I've figured out on my own. So want to give that credit. Okay. Don't you love when I just blow right into the microphone? First thing that jumps out to me about this is that there is an element to anxious attachment that can be really hard with combating shame, because there's this behaving out of character is kind of par for the course. When you're anxiously attached versus some of the other, any of the other styles, hyperactivation is kind of the name of the game. So instead of being shut down or disconnected, there's a level of ramping up, hence where this name comes from, anxious. It's a ramped up, hyperactivated, overwhelmed kind of stance. And you take the fight stance. Out of fight, flight, freeze, anxiously attached are more prone to take fight. It means you're going to be behaving more outwardly, more dramatically, one could say, or just noticeably. And this is something I don't have time to get into today, but maybe in a future episode. There is at least anecdotal evidence that I have that more people of different attachment styles tend to partner with each other, and anxious and avoidant partner very often. And that can be hard because if you're with a more avoidantly attached person, they're dealing with deactivation, a shutdown, a disconnect, a neutrality. It can come off as calm, while the anxiously attached person comes off as really dysregulated and over the top and dramatic. And that can lead to a lot of self-judgment over those behaviors. And so, I can hear that in this question, like spiraling, rereading text, kind of doing this over the top stuff just when like your partner says they're off or seems a little bit off, And so yeah, common reactions can look like talking a lot or being overly emotional or fortune telling, but it's all like gloom and doom, predicting out into the future, but everything is bad and going to go wrong. Or like clinging or protesting. That fight stance, like, no, come back, talk to me, reassure me, what's wrong, and not believing the other person when they say it's okay, or I'm just a little off, or I'm a little tired. So in this dear question, when you're searching through text for clues, whether the clue you're searching for, if he hates you or if he loves you, it's a result of that hyperactivation and searching for an external source of regulation to protect against the deepest fear that someone more anxiously attached, which is abandonment. That's the deep fear. So am I going to be abandoned? Let me find clues to either reassure me or freak me out more that yes, I am going to be abandoned, or no, things are actually okay and I can settle. But the problem with that is it's a never-ending quest, and that search for reassurance can paradoxically continue to perpetuate the problem. Because if we get that reassurance, or we, ask our partner enough, like, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? And they're just like, no, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. I love you, whatever. It can continue to perpetuate that cycle of believing that we need external reassurance to feel okay. So anyway, going back to this example, when your system registers the offness of your partner, which, already one of the gifts of a more anxious attachment is that attunement to others. It is a gift in a way because you can empathically respond to people and read the room and know what's going on with someone and be able to show up for them in a more attuned way. And, inherently in all the things we struggle with are built-in gifts. So it also can be a struggle that there's this hyper sensitivity to any level of offness. And then that gets read as a threat within our system. And that threat could potentially lead to a breakup or abandonment, that big fear, even when your partner says he's tired after work, it's just not enough to make you feel okay. You never fully believe him. And thus the cycle. Now I'm going to cling. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to talk a lot to try to make sure everything's okay. Maybe I'll become overly emotional in hopes that you will soothe me. And we're off to the races. So even in neutral cases, more anxiously attached people tend to read them as rejection and fill in the blank with assumptions like, I must have done something wrong. I'm wrong. I did something wrong. You don't love me. The fill in the blank is never a good thing. We're making assumptions and we're taking that really neutral stimuli and making it into something really threatening. So, this is exhausting, right? Like, it's cueing off this system, being like constantly vigilant and uncertain about where we stand with the people in our lives. So the issue here is that there is a need for self-regulation skills and a development of self-worth and agency. That's what is the missing puzzle piece. Because what we want to do, and as someone that is more anxiously attached, what we want to do is reach out. Please, you help me. You soothe me. And it feels so wrong to not do that. But the antidote lies in the opposite. Turning inward, finding tools for self-regulating, and feeling confident and secure in your own self and your worth and your agency, your ability to do something, your efficacy. That is the antidote to that clinging behavior that is so endemic, I hope I'm using that word in the right way, of this attachment style. So the question about, reacting to a real issue versus just your anxiety is an interesting one. How do we tell the difference between the two? I think the thing is, there is something really catastrophic. It feels very catastrophic about an anxious attachment wound activation. It's just awful. Everything is bad, and your system is just totally flooded with this sense of, I am going to be abandoned. This is awful. They hate me. I've made this, mortal mistake, or I've just screwed things up. And there is a catastrophic feeling of fear and overwhelm. And so I think it can really feel out of control whether or not the issue is quote unquote real. I don't really think that's the problem here. I don't think the problem is discerning real issues that are actually something to be concerned about versus when you're just, anxiously reading a neutral stimuli as negative. So I think the way to look at it is more about, how can I maintain a sense of self and internal stability no matter what in the face of a real threat, quote unquote, if your partner was really upset with you, or a neutral stimuli that I'm reacting to. How do I stay grounded no matter what the situation is? whether or not the feared stimulus is true doesn't have to have bearing on how we can respond. So, like, maybe something is actually going on with your partner and he's just not ready to tell you yet, or he's just tired from a long day. Either way, you can be capital O okay. And I say capital O because sometimes it doesn't feel okay, even to a securely attached person. If something really was wrong and your partner was, pulling away or questioning the relationship, even to a securely attached person, that's not going to feel great. Somebody starts talking to you about maybe not feeling like satisfied with the relationship, it's not going to feel good. But there's a sense of, I am okay. I can weather this. I will survive it. I will find my way through this because I have myself. And that is helpful whether or not the threat is real or more fabricated or imagined. Because security doesn't mean an avoidance of pain or even abandonment. It's not like secure people don't get broken up with and don't feel the pain of that. But either way, there is ability to weather the storm. So then for the other part, that the other question asking about needing constant reassurance, I touched on how seeking it out can actually perpetuate the issue, because what we want to do is build our capacity and tolerance for self-regulating. So they're all connected. This idea, what I was talking about being like capital O okay, and then also, not needing constant reassurance. It's all connected to this idea of seeking our own internal regulation tools and self-worth. So what self-soothing tools can you use? Or healthy distractions or affirming self-talk? And really speaking from experience, the affirming self-talk piece has been very helpful. It is self-regulating in that way of just like, I'm going to be okay. I can weather this. I have been through hard things. I can survive difficulty. Someone is allowed to be upset with me and it doesn't have to be the end of the world. I am not bad for doing something wrong. I am not bad for hurting someone or upsetting them. I trust this person. I love them. I believe that they will be able to weather their own disappointment or upset with me. We can get through this. I can get through this. Things like that are really soothing. And just taking a step back when that nervous system dysregulation kicks off, taking a step back, giving yourself time, even 10 minutes, head out the door, go on a walk, get in nature when it is the absolute last thing you want to do. You want to fight it out. You want to ask that person. You want to make sure everything is okay and will be okay and you will not be abandoned. But head out that door, mumble to yourself, cry, whatever, about how awful it feels and how much you just want to reach out and make sure everything's okay. And walk and walk and walk, 10 minutes at least, and see things will settle down. And your head can kind of clear and it's like, oh, okay. Now I feel like I can approach this from a more calm place. It's amazing how quick it can happen. And healthy distractions too. I mean, going on a walk, that's one thing, but also like pull up a funny video, read a book. Well, I don't know if I could read a book when I'm activated, but if you can, read a book. Do a little scrolling, honestly, a little healthy distraction to just bring things down so that you can approach it from more of a calm, more neutral headspace. Those are loving things to do to help teach yourself, I can tolerate this discomfort without having to reach out for reassurance. Also, expressing your needs directly instead of what us anxiously attached like to do, which is a little bit more like backdoor or through accusations or protest, and by backdoor, I mean like kind of a manipulative, like not exactly saying what the issue is, but like kind of saying it. And, through accusations too, like an example of this would be like your partner is a little bit off after work. Instead of saying, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit disconnected. Do you think we could have some time to connect later tonight? You know, more directly saying what you want. Because people, especially somebody that's a little bit more avoidant, can respond better to that. And it can be helpful to understand the historical context and the narratives that you're telling yourself. So kind of understanding where some of this anxious attachment can come from. It's not always big things. Like, you might have really lovely parents, but there's just little moments of not being met or not being understood. Or there can be bigger things like how your emotional reactions or needs were responded to when you were younger, what your parent was capable of, that kind of led to this idea that they weren't going to be totally consistent and there for you. And it created, a need to turn up the dial, to turn up your signs of distress and crying out or reaching out to try and elicit a response from them, because that's essentially what we're doing as adults. Don't abandon your own needs. Honor them. That's exactly what has been needed this whole time. So the more you can honor yourself and honor your own needs and treating yourself with kindness and saying, hey, what do you need? Like, do we just need a moment? Do we need to be comfortable? Can I make you a cup of tea? That is a really loving and reparative thing to do. So that's what I've got. Like I said, stay tuned for next week on avoidant attachment. And then you can also check out my episode with Remy Ramirez on the Patrauma podcast, where we talk all about disorganized attachment. So that's where the disorganized information will live, but go ahead and follow along over here to catch my episode next week on avoidant attachment, and possibly more future episodes on, how it shows up in your relationship, in dating, whatever. I like to talk about this, so I'm sure I'll talk about it more. And I would love to answer follow-up questions. So find me over on Instagram or TikTok at the Evergreen RX, or leave them below this podcast. And if you like this, if you found it really helpful or informative for you, please just take 2 seconds to give me a 5-star rating on the podcast platform of your choice, because it means a lot to me and it helps out a lot. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. That's all for now. I'll catch you next week, all about avoidant.